Hello, Professor Frey. Hello. Oh, you're still connecting to audio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Surviving.
Good to hear.
It's Friday.
Yeah.
Good morning, Tina.
So we are just waiting on
Mary Jo.
Mary Jo.
And she's notoriously late, and Tina's got to leave by 10:30. So
Okay.
if you want to get started with Tina, you can.
I can wait till Mary Jo gets in here.
We'll give her a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you at home or are you in Wausau?
I am in Wausau. I was living in the dorms at Haymarket Landing, and we had to move out mid-March, I think. But just finishing up finals, I graduate basically as soon as this is done. So
Really?
yeah.
Awesome. Good for you.
Thank you. And I start grad school in Madison in the fall.
Hopefully.
So are
Hopefully. Yeah, that's right.
you living with your mom?
Yes.
Bugging her?
Oh, super. I think we're both keeping each other entertained, honestly.
Yeah. I
Then-
know mine was talking about coming back home. I'm like, okay.
He works, is he still doing Army stuff?
He is, yes. He's been doing that, and he went to a semester at UW-Eau Claire and just wasn't ready and kind of decided not to, but now he's been out in the workforce for a little over a year and a half and decided that maybe he wants to do something other than pound nails. So I think he's going back in the fall.
Eau Claire's, I love it, but I understand college isn't what everyone likes.
He just wasn't ready, at
Yeah.
that point in time, and I wish he'd leave and go somewhere else other than
Yeah.
Eau Claire. He had gotten into UW lacrosse, and I'm like, I really wish you would just go down there. I think it would be helpful. But yeah, if you want to get started, MJ's always late, so.
Okay, we'll get started. So did both of you get a chance to look at the email with the consent forms?
I did, yes.
Okay. Tina, you got to, did either of you fill them out yet?
Yeah, I did this morning.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I filled out the one this morning electronically, and I'm just actually hitting forward on the signed one to you right now.
Sweet, that sounds great. So first of all, can I get you both to say your name and spell them?
Yep. Tina Tyson. Tina is Tina. Tyson is Theisen.
Brenda Barnhart. Brenda, Brenda, Barnhart, Barnhardt. I had to think about that.
It's okay. And then who do you guys represent? Who do you guys work for?
My husband and I own our office. It's Remax Real Estate Group.
And I work for the Realtors Association of Northwestern, Wisconsin. I'm their executive officer.
So what does that mean?
It's the professional trade association that all realtors within an 18-county area belong to.
Okay, cool. So first of all, how have both of you been affected by the COVID-19? Not necessarily the disease itself, but like the fallout.
Well, I was actually out of the country when a lot of the fallout started. My husband and I were on a vacation in Mexico. When we left, they had closed the schools for 10 days, and while we were there, they announced that they were closed indefinitely. When things started happening, we had to wait to find out whether or not real estate was going to be considered a essential business. So that put us in like a quandary for a little while, because actually at that time I had probably about 8 to 10 pending sales on the board, which means that there were accepted offers and they were scheduled to close within the next couple months. So right there, you're wondering what's going to happen with these people. So that was kind of difficult. Wow. I think, Brenda, do you remember how long we had to wait before finding out if we were essential or not?
It was about 2.5 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. So we continued business as usual, as much as we could. Everybody was making adjustments. A lot of the lenders that I talked to were figuring out how to work from their homes because they shut down their doors for people coming in. Some of them were still going into their offices, but a lot of them were starting to work from home. The title companies also started locking their doors. So, people were not allowed in, which is different. I've been doing this for 15 years and I had always attended the closings in person, and now I can't, which is kind of difficult because I don't get to see that moment when the buyer gets the keys. And then even on our end, do we show houses? Do we do open houses? We had to wait. There was a lot of unanswered questions that nobody could answer at that time. So, first we had to wait, and then, not only our own personal businesses decide what to do, but then, what to do as a realtors association. How do we advise on the questions? What do we tell them to do? People call in. I'm sure Brenda fielded a lot of questions. Can I show houses? Can I list a house? Can I do an open house? So we had to advise, 900 and something people on how to conduct business.
So can you do those things? Can you sell houses, go to house showings?
Yes. Our state association was really, really great. They got to work right away creating forms and also creating guidelines, COVID instructions basically that, and it's still up to the agent and to the client. There were people that chose not to put their houses up for sale because they were nervous about people coming in, and they were nervous about the economy. Also, what the economy was going to do as a result. But we instilled guidelines that, hand sanitizer, sellers would leave doors open so that we didn't need to touch surfaces. At that time, gloves were being used, and I carried spray hand sanitizer and gloves with me in the vehicle. And yeah, we went according to what made everybody comfortable. We started doing virtual open houses instead of in-person open houses, virtual showings. You have to think about home inspectors and appraisers too in all of this, because the home inspector goes into the house, their inspection lasts anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. And, they have the buyer there with them. Well, some of them now request that only they go in at first, and then the buyer joins them at the end. Home appraisers won't go into the house if somebody else is there, and they'll send special instructions. So, actually, I think overall we did a great job of getting the information out to our members, out to our clients, and I don't think I heard a single complaint from anybody about, I have to use hand sanitizer before going in this person's house. Everybody, I think, did really, really well.
Kind of along the same lines. I know when people go to look at houses, they bring lots of family members with. Who is allowed inside of the house? Has that changed?
Well,
I wouldn't say that it's changed due to the best practices, but we can't force, but we can advise to keep it down to a minimum. For example, me personally, my parents were looking at places at that time. So I'm sitting here in this position advising all my members to, don't bring extended family and the whole neighborhood with you when you're going to look at a house. And my mother calls me and she's like, hey, I want you to come down and look at this house with us. It's about 6 miles from your place. I'm like, Mom, I can't. I would love to, but I can't because I'm advising all my members to not bring extended family, to not bring, everybody and their brother. And she was disappointed, but understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and above all, it kind of goes back to that it is somebody's home. And, we need to go by what is comfortable for them because, we don't necessarily have a right to be there. It's a privilege. to be able to go into somebody's home. So we need to respect that. And normally if it's explained to the person, you know what, I really understand that your parents want to come along, or you want to bring your brother and your sister and all their kids, but you know, it's just, we can't all be in there together. And I don't think anybody's really, you know, they maybe roll their eyes, shake their head, but you know, they understand the reason behind it.
Okay. So along the same vein, we kind of touched on this already. What like exact or what specific changes have you had to make in response to this?
On the association side, I mean, we started from staff side, so we had staff in here. I now have staff working remotely. One staff was unable to work remotely, so she would still be in the office. I'm in the office and I'm remote, both, so we changed staffing. We had a brand new employee who literally only started with us 2 weeks prior to all this, who has been able to, I mean, we moved her to her house and said, oh, by the way, it's a brand new job and now you're working at home and can't talk to any of us. So, but she did really well with that. Learning how to communicate, supervise staff, plus communicate with membership and, you know, the board and all those virtually. Lucky for us, I'm going to say lucky for us, we're kind of a hybrid association anyways, because we cover such a large geographic area. We had already put Zoom meetings in place. Our directors were already used to having some attending a meeting virtually and some attending in person. So it really wasn't a big change that way. We did have to change our bylaws and some of our policies to allow full, and it was something we needed to do anyways because we'd kind of been operating virtually kind of in between, but we really went through the bylaws and cleaned them up. So now we can pretty much do everything virtually, approve stuff virtually, have recommendations from the board virtually, approve our elections ballots virtually. So we went through and did all that. On the business side for our members, we had to change some policies in their multiple listing service to allow them to function in the environment that we currently are with virtual showings and things like that. For example, we had a policy in there that if you were going to put in a virtual tour, it couldn't be branded, meaning it couldn't be, you know, it couldn't end with your own personal URL or something like that. And we changed that policy for the members because it just, there was a lot of free platforms that they could use to put a virtual showing out there, but it would brand it with their own personal name or something. So we've opened up some of those policies so they can function in the environment which we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at our office, I mean, I manage the sales staff, you know, and our office does more than just real estate. We also are property managers, and we have a construction company as well. I contacted all of our agents and told them to take things as they're comfortable with. You know, we never really require anybody to be in the office anyway, because so many work remotely these days, you know, and that. But you know, we reached out to our cleaning company right away and asked them to do additional cleaning in our office because it's cleaned early every morning anyway. But we asked them to do extra on like the common areas, our break room, all the doorknobs, handles, things like that. And luckily we already had several big containers of Lysol wipes in our supply room. So, you know, I grabbed one and have it on my desk, and, you know, I use it to wipe down in our conference room, the keyboard, stuff like that. Since we do property management, we have a lot of renters that stop by, and we put a sign on the door because we already had a drop box. We said, you know, if all you're doing is dropping off your rent, please put it in the drop box. If you need an envelope, you know, we put some envelopes out there for them. So we cut down on the foot traffic like that. And then, you know, just, you know, those were the changes that we needed to do for our office, and everybody was really comfortable. Quite honestly, you know, I think there was one agent who was mainly working from home anyway. And we didn't see him for probably 2 months. But that was also because he's got a newborn baby and they lost their sitter, you know, with all this going on. So and his wife works at a hospital, so they were kind of playing tag team in there. But otherwise, the other ones came in and out as usual. So, I mean, but, I think one of the biggest things that happened was once they started shutting businesses down, and the ones that were required to be shut down, ones that were deemed non-essential, because, going out there and showing homes with a buyer, it still was a competitive situation because I was showing houses and there was still ones that came on the market and you'd get 2, 3, 5 offers submitted on them. What your buyer did for a living became important because they asked, where do they work? What do they do? Are they going to get laid off? Because I did have buyers that were already supposed to close on a house, but she worked for a pet boarding company. And since nobody was going anywhere, she no longer was employed. So they're pushed back into June now. You used to think that somebody in the medical profession was a pretty safe bet for being a buyer. But once they started furlonging them, I had somebody 2 weeks prior to their closing, this 2 weeks, they're supposed to move into a new house. And all of a sudden she was going to be furlonged by the hospital. So luckily in that case, we were able to work with her boss, and her boss reinstated her hours so that she could go forth and buy. But then otherwise, they changed some of the loan programs with raising some of the requirements, like the minimum credit score. So I had a couple buyers that were qualified that all of a sudden weren't. So, I mean, and I know talking to some lenders, they were really busy with pre-approvals in March, and then all of a sudden they pretty much skidded to a halt. So because people weren't sure when they were going to go back to work and what was going to happen, and huge numbers of unemployment. But yeah, so that's right there, things are still busy, and I've actually been very pleasantly surprised that we have not had a huge slowdown that we were wondering what we would have. But it's basically touch and go to see what happens on a daily, if not weekly basis for everybody.
So are people putting houses on the market right now?
Yeah.
And if they are they selling?
Yeah, they are. And it's all price ranges, which, has been interesting to watch. I'm not a huge numbers person. I always tell everybody I married my husband because he does math and I don't like to. But certain statistics, especially in this industry, sometimes fascinate me as to why certain things take place and how they happen. Just yesterday, I think there is, a house came on the market for $85,000 and a property came on the market for $900,000. So, and it all still comes down to location, price, as to whether or not it's going to sell. But I still see a lot of them selling relatively quickly. But there are some people waiting, because I have had people that are buyers and they're waiting to see if the market goes down so they can get a house for cheaper. But no, they're still, and people ask us that, should I put my house on the market right now? I think a lot of the buyers, because we still have inventory issues, and even though the banks aren't getting a lot of new pre-approvals, there was still a lot of existing buyers out there that already had their pre-approval. And, they're constantly watching to see if something comes on. And if it's there and, they like it, they're going to try to buy it.
Brenda, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Where the heck is Mary Jo?
Yeah, what the heck?
She texted, she's got stuck on a call. She'd pop in when she could, so.
Okay. So, as I understand it, the board is in charge of giving out licenses to new realtors and training them?
Nope, we are not. That is actually up to our state licensing board, gives out the licenses. I don't even want to say rule over them. Our board is regional.
Anything license related is taken care of and ruled over by the state.
Yep.
Once they have their license, if they want to use the term realtor, then they need to join the national, state, and local associations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
We do monitor CE, continuing education, which has to do with their license, but we do monitor that and make sure they go through that. And then, but anything license related, it goes through the state.
Okay.
Mhm.
So do we see people right now getting their licenses to become realtors, or
Yes.
so people are becoming realtors still?
They are, and it slowed a little bit because the testing centers were closed, but now the testing centers are open again. I have 49 people right now waiting for new member orientation because we stopped new member orientation typically because that's a one-day in-person programming. We didn't want to move it to a virtual platform because there is something to be said about that one day of coming in and building those relationships when you're a brand new realtor. And so we will just begin to start moving forward with orientation in June again. But yeah, actually most of those 49 that came in have been since February. So.
Wow.
And I have several brokers, well, Mary Jo's one of them that has a couple that were waiting because they couldn't go take their exam, and now they can. Some of the testing centers are open.
So how have members adapted to using more technology? Do we see lots of troubles popping up? I know that you said some of your members or board members were already used to attending Zoom meetings online because of the wide district. Is there any struggles with the technology? Are people adapting fairly well?
I think people are adapting very well, but I think it's area driven. For example, our Chippewa and our Eau Claire area, which is kind of our main hub, they've been very used to technology and work well with it and are very creative with it. My northern members don't always work with, there's MJ, don't always work with technology, but yet their area they just didn't feel it like we did down here. So they were kind of like, they were more business as usual anyways. So.
Okay. Hello, Mary Jo. Welcome. Glad
So
you were.
Mary Jo gets to talk and I can stop.
It's okay.
Yeah, Tina's been yakking. Gosh, I'm just kidding.
So on to the next question. Are there any other parts of the industry, like appraisers and appraising homes, that has slowed down home sales right now?
Slow down, I would say no. Right before all this happened, the interest rates took a really, really dive down, and a ton of people rushed to the bank to refinance. So when you have people doing purchases and the banks flooded with refis, because each of those refis, most of them need to have an appraisal done. And so that I think probably slowed things down more, trying to get an appraiser out to a property. But otherwise, like I said, some of them created, their set of rules that they want. Like I said, nobody else can be in the house when they go. If they see somebody else there, they will not go in. They request that the seller already turn all the lights on, open up all closet doors, open up other doors. And a lot of them that I talked to, like they would put booties on, they have their hand sanitizer. Appraisers aren't in the house for very long anyway, quite honestly. So, it wasn't that. The biggest issue we had with it was just a new construction, because an appraiser goes, and if we have contractors there, to try to clear the contractors out when we're needing them to get work done. It was extra scheduling on our part, but most of them communicated really well with us to let us know when they were going out, and the contractors would just step outside, and walk down the street and, be able to go back in 10 minutes later. So, I mean, otherwise, I don't think anything really slowed down because of it. It just involved more coordination and working together, which is always a plus.
I agree with Tina. I think the only, they allowed for some drive-by appraisals, which had never existed before. So that was unique.
What's a drive-by appraisal?
Just where they don't have to go in at all.
Yep, they don't have to go in the house. Yep.
So that
the house standing is basically drive by, make sure it's standing and it's where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Well, and some of them also, I think the banks lightened up on their, appraisal. Like if the buyer was putting a lot of money down and high credit score, where it wasn't a huge risk, they actually, some of them waived the appraisal completely. So, because I know we just refinanced, we actually just signed the paperwork yesterday and they didn't require an appraisal.
Wow.
So that was nice. Then it was actually, when we originally talked to them, they said it would probably take 90 days for our refi to get done, but it took less than 30.
Yep, and we too, we have a mortgage company within our brokerage, and for certain investors and or clients, we waive the appraisal. So we created new environments for that, and our mortgage people, they've also all been working from home, and the difference, I'm not sure what you guys have covered already, but a few differences within the mortgage department. They raised their credit score limits. So they used to have 600 credit score would apply and they would be approved for a loan, but they did raise that within our mortgage company to 660 for a period of time. And looked at some loan programs if you were a buyer that weren't really your debt to income ratio, or a lot of things they weren't getting approved as fast. So they did tighten up, the mortgage tightened up, I think, more than any changes within appraisal on that note.
So during our last recession, the housing bubble burst and everything kind of fell from there. Do you get the feeling that the economy is going to be as dire as that time?
Well, I certainly hope not. I think Mary Jo and I were actually in real estate class together. So we became realtors at the same time, and now we're both brokers. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of fun. I think pretty much we got our licenses in, was it 2005?
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, the recession hit in 2008. Mm-hmm. So, we lived through it. It, like I said, it's all going to go, I think, on a day by day, week by week, month by month basis. And we just have to wait and see what happens. I mean, I know I heard the unemployment numbers this morning. There is state of Wisconsin, 440,000 jobs lost. People that are on unemployment right now. I mean, just those numbers are kind of scary, but I'm sure that was probably numbers before businesses started opening back up recently. And not all of them have opened back up. So, some of them are still scheduling because they had to get supplies and things like that needed in order to comply with orders. So, I mean, our area didn't get hit as hard last time as some of the other parts of the country. And so, I hope that would be what it would do again. I don't know. What have you seen on your end, Mary Jo?
Yeah, the economists for the state of Wisconsin that we've talked to as a board really all are predicting a resurge coming in the third quarter. So we are still, my numbers at my Eau Claire office, I'm above last year for production. Now my northern Wisconsin, where that is a secondary home market, those numbers are down. Around 15-20% depending on the week. So which, that secondary buyer, they, it's a want, not a need, mm-hmm. compared to like the Eau Claire area. So they are talking about that third quarter resurge with our low inventory. I think it's just really been mm-hmm. For the Eau Claire and surrounding area, even up north too. They do have low inventory. People aren't listing, so they're projecting, but that will be based, like Tina said, on week by week what happens with the pandemic. So and we'll
yeah, because it changes on an hourly basis.
Yeah. Yep.
I think
I've never followed so many news things in my life.
Yeah. I think at this moment, everything that I'm hearing from the national economists, the state economists, and the numbers I've been seeing on the stats that are coming out, I think it's a little early for us to tell yet mm-hmm. what's going to happen. My gut feeling, yes, the unemployment numbers are high, but I haven't been hearing from the membership, other than I would mirror Mary Jo's sentiment of our northern area, that they've really had a slowdown. They all seem to be very, very busy.
Mhm.
If it does slow down, I do feel that it'll bounce back pretty fast, as long as we can remain open.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to throw in there that, I mean, I think that waiting period when we had to find out whether or not we were essential was a hard one. And I'm very, very grateful, you know, that they deemed real estate necessary, because I know a realtor in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania did not allow real estate to be an essential business.
Wow.
So they were completely shut down, and they were lobbying at the state level and just this week they got reinstated. So yeah, I mean, it's all parts of the country were treated differently. So, you know, it was a joyous morning when the list came out and we were on it.
Yes.
Let me find where I was. So far, what has been the biggest challenge out of all of this?
I would say the biggest challenge would be technology. You know, I have agents in a you know, run a computer for dummies kind of level, and then other ones that are at a very advanced level. So it's been, and then with clients as well. So it's created a great environment for me as a broker to be able to reconnect with everyone at any given point in time. But if a client is not comfortable in having a Zoom meeting to go over a contract, we've been able to show properties virtually. However, the technology part of it, I have had people wanting to look at properties. They live in Milwaukee, so then I had to find out, you know, do you have an iPhone or a Droid? And then I'd find an agent with that type of phone so that they could show them the home. So it just technology-wise, I think has been, you know, it's been a good and bad thing for both, and it's allowed us to create a new environment on how to work in real estate. But for some age levels or some capability levels, it's been extremely challenging for the client and for the agent. So
I would say for me on the association side, the biggest challenges have been being able to meet the members' needs, and being that as the quarantine dragged on, my phone rang more and more, and it was, you know, trying to keep a positive spin out there and being responsive to their needs. And sometimes it might have just been that 20 minutes on the phone listening to them vent about what was going on in their day. So I think for staff on the association side, it's been being able to be, not that we are not responsive, but being even more responsive and coming up with ways to allow them to do their job, because their job is way different than our job here at the association.
Yeah, you know, and we have agents and people making the same juggling act that other people are. You know, schools were canceled, so, you know, members have kids at home. You know, I mean, I'm lucky my kids' ages don't need constant supervising, but, you know, other ones, they have little kids. So, you know, they're trying to meet their clients' needs. They're trying to keep their kids engaged. You know, I mean, it's, you know, everybody had different struggles, different needs. So.
For me, I mean, not that I've always been out and about, but I spent more time in my other staff who's up. We spent a lot of time visiting or just making one-on-one Zoom calls just so they knew, oh, hey, I'm so glad you guys are here for us. It was more that it didn't matter if we didn't really cover anything. It just was the fact that we reached out and talked to them. We did a lot of office meetings.
Well, you know, in realtors in general, you know, we're not introverts. You know, that's, so, I mean, we are social, yeah, we're social people. So also emotional wise for all of our members, our sales staff in our offices, you know, to kind of have an isolation, you know, is not easy. So.
I think the other thing is with what level of concern does your client have? So we go to show a home and they are not in full agreement with the pandemic, and they come in and they're, you know, the seller wants masks worn, they want shoes off, they don't want you touching things, and that client brings their family and their children. And so having to set more extreme guidelines to saying, you know, I'm sorry, but you cannot bring your entire family on this showing. You need to reduce the risk of that. And with the low inventory, buyers are having to make a decision in 15-minute showing segments. So they're coming into the home, walking through it, and they have 15 minutes before the next showing, and then they're deciding to purchase it. It creates a whole nother level of stress along with everything. So, but.
So do you know of any programs that were enacted during this pandemic that help realtors, home buyers, sellers, and renters?
We at the state of Wisconsin have adopted, and we're still working through our Association of Electronic Earnest Money Delivery. So that's one thing that was already in play. So that was allowed to deliver earnest money electronically. And the remote notary for the state of Wisconsin, that was also on the agenda to be approved in July, but it was pushed forward sooner so that you could close remotely. I guess the other one would be a couple things that we talked about earlier were drive-by appraisals. So those are three that I can think of. Anything else, you guys?
No, those are probably the three biggest ones.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's basically it. That's kind of all that I had. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you guys think we should mention and make sure is said?
I don't think so.
No?
Mm-mm.
I guess I would like to say, for, you know, if anybody watches this in the beginning, I personally am really proud of the industry, and I'm really proud of our association as a whole, because we literally pivoted in how we did business and how we did things in a matter of 24 hours, 72 hours. It was just amazing to me how quickly people adapted and changed and were able to start moving and working in an environment that no one really had any idea. And they were like, okay, now what? And we're like, not sure. Hold on, we'll get to that. And you know, like Tina said earlier, there really wasn't, at least here anyways, a ton of negativity, pushback. Everybody was very thankful for all the direction they were getting. You know, they may not have liked a thing here or there, but you know, it was quite, I think, very positive, and the ability to pivot and change and do things that they've never done before I still look at it and like, wow, we did a good job here, people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, real estate is an important part of the economy. Always has been and always will be. So, you know, for us to just be able to keep continuing going forward and serving our clients, you know, it was huge. So I think everybody responded well, from state level all the way down to our individual members. I think everybody just, yeah, I mean, there was really no big complaints. I'm sure we all vented to ourselves and each other, but we all pulled together really, really well.
And even all the association execs, I mean, we went to weekly meetings across the state. There's 24 of us, and we went to weekly meetings and are like, okay, how are you dealing with this? How are you doing with that? Because if we could collaborate, then we could help the members as they move down the pipe. And the MLSs, especially ours with a lot of the other ones. I mean, sometimes MLSs are in competition, but we're like, hey, what are you doing? How are you implementing this? How are you making this change? Oh, you're doing that? That sounds great. I mean, there was a ton of collaboration across, I would even say across the nation, on how do we make this work.
Mm-hmm.
I would echo Brenda on that. We just had our company meeting, and within that, they talked about how some of the largest brokerages throughout Minnesota, they all talked about how they were going to implement the changes of Minnesota reducing the restrictions, because Wisconsin's with the Supreme Court ruling, ours was just kind of 24 hours, turn on a dime again.
Just kind of out there.
Just like, okay, now you're open. But they, all the large brokerages, which be, Remax and Edina and so on and so forth, they all got together and talked about how they would start making small changes and safe changes for the company as a whole. So, the competing brokers, yet they wanted to make sure to try to keep the environment as safe as possible. So I think whether it be on a state level or a brokerage level, it really has, I've been incredibly impressed at the camaraderie and going through and saying, okay, what's your firm doing, and how is your MLS doing this, and how are we doing this? So it's almost created a better environment for us to kind of bounce ideas off each other and try to keep our agents safe, our staff, our clients. So it's really, I think it's been a interesting time, to say the least.
That's all great stuff to hear. Again, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. I will send the link to where this interview will be uploaded onto the UWC EC Pandemic Archive website. So hopefully Brenda can send that out to you too. And yeah, that's it. So thank you guys.
Cool.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day and keep
moving on.
just keep going.
Keep going.
Congratulations on your graduation, Erin. She's
Unable for a long weekend.
done talking to us. So.
Yeah. Thank you
All right,
guys.
bye guys.
See ya.
Bye.